Architecture is one of the hardest majors, and becoming a licensed architect, it's honestly a marathon. If I had thought about it too hard before I actually started the process, I would have said, hell no, that's not the route for me. I'm not going to do it. But I didn't. I kept going, and I ended up figuring it out as I went. And somehow, I don't know about somehow, but I became a licensed architect, even with ADHD and the struggles with school, even when I thought I just wasn't cut out for it. So if you've ever felt like your brain just doesn't work as it's supposed to, like you can't focus or study the way that others do, then this video is for you. Because the truth is, you can become a licensed architect even if you are neurodivergent. So let's talk about how. Hey everyone, I'm Bryn Young. I'm a licensed architect, and I help aspiring architects pass their licensing exams and become architects too. So architecture school has a reputation. It is tough. It demands creativity, problem solving, speaking in front of crowds, and long hours. The average time it takes to become a licensed architect, I think it's like 13 years now. And people just don't know that. People who haven't gone through the process aren't aware of really what it takes to become a licensed architect. And also that's why it's important that we talk about this, we speak about it so that people understand the value of what we do, the value of our license, the value of our schooling, all of that. And I want to bring it back to when I was in school. To be honest, I felt like I was just hanging on. You talk to anybody, well, I don't know. I was pretty open about it, but I was not the straight A student. I always thought that I just wasn't very good at school. I could hyper-focus on certain things that interested me and actually do well in those subjects, but then everything else was just impossible. I got comfortable with C's and sometimes D's. Luckily, I was in a home environment where C's were passing, obviously not totally encouraged, but not demonized either, which allowed me to be a little bit more comfortable. But then in areas that I did love, like algebra, I had the top grade in the class. And so in a lot of subjects that I wasn't really good at or I couldn't focus on, I kind of just slinked into the background. I just kind of blended in a little bit. Or I focused on other things. Now, I'm gonna get a little real in this video, and don't learn from me, or don't do as I do, but learn from me. I ended up skipping a lot of classes. I ended up failing PE class because I skipped so much and had to retake it. Same thing with geometry. It's ironic now that geometry was one of the classes I had to retake because now I'm a licensed architect. But it was easier for me to just skip out and not be there because I just couldn't focus. I couldn't do it. But when the motivation did hit or the certain subject did hit, I would go hard. I could have study marathons. I could do excellent. I could get 100% on classes. I felt like I could actually go take an exam and like memorize the whole chapter, like see it in my brain. So I was good at certain things. It just wasn't all of them. And I would really beat myself up for being inconsistent. And also, if you were to ask me in high school if I were going to like a top school or getting a degree that would take 13 years, like becoming a doctor or something, I would have said no way because I didn't think I could do it. So if any of that sounds like you, just know that you are not alone. And it also doesn't mean that you're not capable of being very successful and doing incredible things. The struggle is real, but with the right tools and strategies and support, you can be incredibly successful. And it also just means you might have to do things a little bit different. You have to do things your way that doesn't necessarily look like what everybody else does. So here's how I made it work. Here is what I learned along the way that not only helped me survive school, but eventually become a licensed architect. So first, I had to leave perfectionism behind. I stopped trying to be great in every class. Now, again, it was really helpful having a family, a support system who didn't, not praise me, the opposite of praise me. For getting C's. Like I wasn't terrified to come bring it home because I was going to get grounded for life. And that helped me because if that were the case, that would have been really hard for my brain. And so I had to leave perfectionism behind so that I could focus on the classes that I did well in. I let myself focus on the subjects that lit me up that I could exceed in. And as long as I was passing the other ones and not totally failing them, then it was okay, especially like in high school or middle school where you have all these different subjects. I allowed myself to just pass some of them and just get through it, while others I really exceeded in. The second thing I did was I found my unique study style. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to study like everybody else. I had to stop shaming myself for not being able to finish a book, not be able to read the full book in English class. I had to stop feeling bad or making myself think I was stupid because they were doing it and I wasn't. What I had to do was find how I could study best. And for me, I had to study out loud. Talking through concepts helped me process them in such a better way than just reading. And when possible, having audible lessons was really helpful for me. Now, when I was in high school, there wasn't Audible or audiobooks or things like that, where now I consume a book every 3 days because I'm listening to it and I can write a report on it afterwards. I know some people are different, so you have to find out what works for you. And I unfortunately didn't have that when I was going through school. And now that I understand that, I think back to, I would have loved English class, but I hated it because I couldn't read a book. And instead of just taking notes, I used things like mind maps, visual maps, diagrams. These types of note taking really helped my brain understand it and recall. Now, again, back in the day, I used to get in trouble because I was doodling and it looked like I wasn't paying attention. When later I realized that that was how I could pay attention. That's how I could stay listening by sketching or doing something or fidgeting, and that would help me retain the information more. If I'm doing and I'm listening, I'm on fire. So it seems like, oh, well, you're not listening and you're not paying attention to me because you're not looking at me and sitting still. I'm like, I'm actually listening and more to you because I'm not sitting down and staying still. So you have to figure out what works for you. Again, I didn't really understand that when I was going through high school, middle school, and I wish I did, because maybe I could have had a conversation with my teachers before school or whatever to have that understanding. And maybe things are different these days. Maybe there's more understanding of different learning styles in school. When I was going through there, I didn't know. I don't think people around me knew. But also, this is to say, you might not know yourself even. Try out different things and find out what works for you. And then also I let myself study in sprints, knowing that there was going to be a cycle of motivation, that I would be super motivated and study like crazy, and then I might not be. So obviously that's hard if you have certain deadlines, but it was more about releasing this pressure on myself that I had to stay super consistent at all times. And know, too, that when I was in that motivation cycle, that I really hit it hard. Okay, number 3, I stopped comparing myself to others. This is such a big one because I knew I wasn't a top student. I wasn't, but that wasn't my goal. I was okay with not being valedictorian. I wasn't even in the top. I mean, I went to a really, one of the top high schools in California, public schools. And so I think multiple people had 5.0s, whatever. I think I ended up graduating with a 3.17, which I think is great. I had to retake a couple classes, but I mean, to me, that was beautiful because it meant that I allowed myself to focus on certain subjects and do really well in them, but I didn't have to do it all. And so I made a point, even into my master's, focusing on concepts that I did well at and not feeling like it had to be everything. And also with the people that were the top students and like to praise about what they were doing right or what things, just great. Be happy for them and understanding that there's no comparison. The fourth thing I did was allow inconsistencies with grace. I mentioned this a little bit before about like the motivation, but with ADHD, and I didn't learn a lot about this until way late in life, when a therapist was like, "Oh, you have ADHD." I'm like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." I don't really talk about it that much because I don't personally love like a label. I don't love to like use it as a crutch or anything like that. Do you? I'm just saying that's me. But what it allowed me to do was have more grace with myself and understand it myself in a different way and create new ways of doing things to support myself. ADHD means waves of productivity and also burnout. Instead of fighting that constantly, I've embraced it. And when the burnout happens or the low time happens or the times where I want to sit in a cave and not talk to anybody, again, I don't know what other word to use, but grace. Like I have grace with myself and knowing, don't worry, it's not going to last forever. It's just part of the cycle. There are cycles. I have another video on energy cycles and talks a little bit more about that and how to have grace with yourself with that. So I highly recommend if you find yourself feeling that or resonating with that, go check that video out too. Okay, number 5, managing my hyperfixation. So hyperfixation is real and sometimes it is amazing. I mean, I've started very incredible businesses, but also sometimes it can distract us. So I had to learn that just because I felt like starting a new business or changing my career, it didn't mean that I had to act on it immediately. So if you love a passion project or if you're always starting a new hobby, know that first of all, incredible. Like I think it's like a superpower and I think it's a beautiful way to live life. And I have to be, first of all, okay with not starting every $1 million idea I have, and also being okay with abandoning something early without feeling regret like, oh, I can never finish something. Because I know that's not true. But that hyperfixation is real and it can be distracting. So use it to our power, to our benefit, especially when you are studying or in school or hyperfixating on a architecture and you want to become an architect, like that's awesome, but also just use it for the power it is without it being totally distracting. 6, I gave myself permission to take time. So some things take longer and that's okay, right? Your life is your timeline and that's okay. Taking breaks doesn't mean you're failing. I reminded myself that progress is progress, no matter what the pace is. So for example, after my second year of college, I was burned out and I was starting to not do great in classes and I had to drop a couple classes and I wasn't doing great. So I decided to take a semester off. And then the second semester, I studied abroad. I moved to Amsterdam. So I basically took a year off. And it was a great way to feel revitalized and come back renewed and ready to go. Now it meant that I ended up graduating a year later. I took an extra semester basically to graduate, but that's okay. And I don't ever regret it. When I finished my undergrad, I took time to work before I got into my master's program because I didn't even know if like I was able to even handle more schooling. So I took a break for a year and a half. And then I went and I got my master's. So take things on your own time and give yourself permission to do that. Okay, the last thing too is staying present and practicing self-compassion. So a lot of what I'm saying is like understanding yourself in a better way, being compassionate with yourself. Instead of worrying about like the next 10 years, I really focused on what was in front of me. Now, with a caveat for that is that I am all about setting like a 10-year goal. I love goal planning, but I didn't hyperfixate on that, which was a good thing. I set those goals and then I kind of released it and let it be and then focused just on what I was doing now. And I started treating myself with kindness instead of the criticism because I knew I was smart, right? Like I could do it. And so when I wasn't passing classes or I wasn't motivated or I literally couldn't get myself to read a book, I would be hard on myself or feel like, have all the things come in of not good enough, not meant to do it, not smart enough, all those things. And so I had to really start practicing kindness to myself and seeing this difference as seriously a superpower. Like, I'm so blessed that I have the brain I do because I can do really incredible, powerful things. And that also comes with hardships too. And that's okay. I'd rather have this crazy power brain than not and learn how to manage it in a way that's healthy and productive and leads to a happy life. So if you are neurodivergent at all, or even if you don't even use that term, because I don't even use that term for myself, if you resonate with anything that I just said and you want to become a licensed architect, just know that it is totally possible and you can do it. And also, if it takes longer or if your path looks different than others, that's okay too. Or if you want to become a licensed architect and you don't ever end up actually getting your license, but you're designing and you're doing something that you love, that's okay too. It might not look like the traditional path, and that's okay. So you're not broken. Your brain's not wrong. You just work differently. And maybe it doesn't even look exactly like mine. Or maybe it does. Maybe you can try out some of the things like talking out loud when you study or listening instead of listening and doing and doodling. It's figuring out how you work and what your superpower is. So whether you're in school, you want to become an architect, you're taking your architecture exams right now, or even you're already working in the field, embrace how your brain works. Find what lights you up, what motivates you, and keep going. Because trust me, if I can do it, if I can be a licensed architect, you can totally do it. So let me know in the comments, have you struggled with studying or staying motivated? What strategies have helped you? And let's share and support each other because my situation isn't the end all be all. Let's hear from you what has worked for you. And if you found this helpful, make sure to like, subscribe. That way I can know if this is the type of content you even want to hear. If you want to hear more, let me know, and I'm here to support you. I will see you next time, and in the meantime, go check out this video next.